Today on Newsgirls, investigating the MAGA ACLU.
Their board of directors is led by several members of Trump's administration.
Block debt relief to black farmers, which the group said was discriminatory. India and Pakistan brink of war.
Both countries are nuclear powers, and Trump says he helped negotiate the ceasefire.
Pakistan's nuclear missile command center been damaged quite deeply.
There is so much misinformation, specifically by the two governments themselves. And glasses that know who you are.
That's what makes these glasses scarier. Like, it only relied on publicly available data.
We spoke to the two geniuses and best friends behind I-XRAY.
Well, welcome to Newsgirls. I'm Wren.
And I'm Mabel. Let's get into the stories.
So you might have seen that last week, a Republican legal group is suing the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, so John Roberts, to try to move some of his power to Trump.
Yeah, amplifying the power of the executive branch.
But you probably didn't know this is the same group that stopped Biden from requiring schools to teach critical race theory in order to get like a federal grant. And just a few months ago, they obtained and released new photos of Hunter Biden meeting Xi Jinping.
They were also the group that sent letters to over 200 sanctuary cities and states saying that if they didn't help federal authorities in arresting immigrants, it would be illegal and that officials and even governors could be imprisoned.
So this week, we decided to track down this pro-Trump group that's been working in the shadows. Turns out they're called America First Legal, and they say they're the conservative answer to the ACLU. So it was founded by Trump's top advisor, who we all know, Stephen Miller, in 2021, right after Biden was sworn in, with the goal of challenging Biden's executive power.
Which is ironic since now they're suing everyone and everything to give Trump more executive power.
It's true.
But during Biden's term, they filed over 100 lawsuits against him and even helped Republican attorneys general prepare for cases. And they did this despite having fewer than 10 lawyers on their payroll, which is kind of crazy because the ACLU has over 500.
Well, that's why it's funny that Stephen Miller is in charge of this operation, because he's not even a lawyer.
Hello, I'm Stephen Miller, founder and president of America First Legal, a charitable foundation dedicated to defending your rights in court. I am here today with an urgent message. America's biggest corporations and universities are illegally discriminating against Americans based on race and sex. So if you are a victim of bigotry disguised as diversity or equity, please contact us now. Racism must be defeated. Thank you.
Their website says, "We founded America First Legal to save our country from the unholy alliance of corrupt special interests, big tech titans, the fake news media, and liberal Washington politicians."
And the AFL kind of brands itself as this underdog, just claiming that it's taking back the power that progressives have taken to misuse the court system, even though this AFL group is all very high profile DC insiders.
Their board of directors is led by several members of Trump's administration, so beyond Stephen Miller, there's also his former chief of staff, Mark Meadows. There's a former acting attorney general and his former budget director. Interestingly, just throwing it out there, they're all white men. And Trump, of course, gave his blessing to this operation when AFL launched, saying the era of unilateral legal surrender must end, and I hope all America First patriots will get behind America First Legal.
And they've had a lot of success. Their cases span the list of MAGA-related issues. So they've fought to protect Florida minors from drag shows, block debt relief to black farmers, which the group said was discriminatory because it focused on black farmers, and even got a core Obamacare provision overturned.
They also put a lot of emphasis on election integrity. So last year it came to light that in Arizona, a computer glitch allowed 200,000 people to register to vote without showing proof of citizenship, which is against the law. So of course, AFL stepped in and sued Arizona and actually got the judge to order Arizona to release the full list of names.
And the AFL's focus on challenging election and voting policies was extremely strategic because they challenged those policies in states like Arizona and Pennsylvania, which, as we know, are key battleground states in the presidential election.
They also stopped Biden from giving a path to citizenship to hundreds of thousands of undocumented immigrants. They protected employers' rights to enforce biblical values in their dress code and bathrooms, aka having a men's and women's room. And they won a case against the CDC for unlawfully deleting employees' emails.
And of course, as we went through their list of cases, we saw some odd ones. So AFL sued NYU on behalf of a male white first-year law student who said he was rejected from the law review because of his race and gender. There's a suit against Nike saying the company discriminates against white males, and one against Mattel, which accuses the toy company that makes Barbies and stuff of promoting a radical LGBTQ plus agenda.
It's seriously crazy how much they've done, and we have never heard of them. We obviously know Stephen Miller because he is currently Trump's deputy chief of staff for policy and Homeland Security advisor, and because he's literally only one of a handful of people who Trump can tolerate from his first administration.
Even during Trump's first firing spree, Miller kind of survived it all and is back for his second term and closer to the president than ever. So apparently Miller meets Trump and his chief of staff, Susie Wiles, every single day to sketch out executive orders. He even has Secret Service protection.
Kevin McCarthy has this wild quote, "I call Stephen Trump's brain. He has the president's complete trust. Trump's complained about everyone, never him."
And he's earned that trust by having this ability to kind of read Trump's brain and turn his desires into actual tangible policies. So during Trump's first term, he was the architect of very hardline immigration policies like the travel ban on immigrants from Muslim countries and then shutting down immigration at the border during the pandemic. He's been also in the headlines the past few days for unsurprisingly wanting to suspend due process for migrants.
Insiders say he, more than any other Trump advisor, has spent time planning out what they're going to do in the second term. So he's planned policies. He's also built relationships with senators and representatives and right-wing media. And Elon, his wife, literally works for Doge. So low-key, Stephen Miller is one of the most powerful people in Washington.
But he isn't the center of attention, spotlight-seeking Elons of the world. He's actually barely ever seen by Trump's side when the cameras are rolling. And according to insiders, Miller works in secrecy to make sure that nobody can subvert the Trump agenda. Apparently, he's very paranoid. He doesn't email, he doesn't write things down. He prefers to send messages through emissaries.
Right, we didn't even know he was the mastermind behind Trump's flood the zone strategy. We all have seen, he's just barraging us with executive orders. And I guess that was Miller's idea to try to overwhelm progressives since they can't keep up with everything at once.
But Miller is more than just a political mastermind. We would be remiss if we didn't mention that literally everyone in Washington refers to him as a racist. Trump has even said that if it was up to Miller, there would be only 100 million people in this country and they would all look like Miller.
Well, no wonder why so many of AFL's suits are against immigrants and people of color. The surprising thing is that Miller is Jewish, so he actually belongs to a minority group. And when you think of the history of white supremacists, they're usually anti-Semitic too. So it's just a weird confluence of stances to have.
And it's not like he's pretending to kind of have these views to get in Trump's good graces. It seems like stopping discrimination against white Americans seems to be Miller's passion project. So 70% of the AFL's total spending goes towards ads claiming anti-white bigotry.
When did racism against white people become okay? Joe Biden put white people last in line for COVID relief funds. Progressive corporations, airlines, universities all openly discriminate against white Americans. Racism is always wrong. The left's anti-white bigotry must stop. America First Legal paid for this ad.
Another ad says that Biden wants to pave the way for children to remove breasts and genitals. Quote, "Not long ago, everyone knew that you're either born a boy or a girl. Not anymore."
I don't know how normal it is for a legal firm to spend 16 times more on its ad than its lawyers, but that's what's happening here.
Definitely not normal.
But we've seen the AFL's role kind of change through administrations, and now it seems like its priority is to serve as Trump's attack dog.
And that's why we thought it was important to cover this story, because if you're wondering what Trump is going to do over the next 4 years, you just need to look at America First Legal's slate of lawsuits.
So let's take a look at some of these cases. So AFL sued Arizona's largest public school district, saying that its policy allowing teachers to discuss gender identity with its students without telling the parents was illegal. And the complaint goes on to predict that sexual violence and genital mutilation could be outcomes of this non-disclosure policy.
That seems like a stretch, but okay. They're also suing the State Department to get the records of the, quote, sabotage at the hotel where Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu stayed before his address to Congress last year. So they claim Biden failed to secure the hotel, which led to protesters attacking police and destroying monuments. And grossly, maggots and bugs were also released in the hotel.
Like, that's such a weird lawsuit. And then, of course, there's this onslaught of DEI cases. They have at least a dozen pending cases of company discrimination against white people because we know how hard it is for them. Like, they're suing on behalf of Emmy Award-winning anchor Jeff Vaughn, who alleges that CBS fired him for being white.
Yeah, they're trying to overturn the NFL's famous Rooney Rule, which requires teams to interview at least 2 candidates that are either minority or female for open coaching jobs. And if you look on the AFL's website, it lists over 40 major corporations that it's filed civil rights complaints against, like literally everyone. Lyft, Hershey, McDonald's, American, United, Southwest Airlines, Disney, Mattel, Kellogg's, Starbucks. Basically, if you've made an effort to try to hire a diverse workforce, expect to be served by AFL.
And these lawsuits get pretty ridiculous. They're actually suing NASCAR for marketing internships, like not even real jobs, but internships towards women and people of color. So the AFL argues that this creates a feeling of inferiority among white men that may affect their hearts and minds in a way unlikely to ever be undone. Like, okay, God forbid a woman ever intern at NASCAR.
Well, don't tell them about Danica Patrick. Well, this wraps your up-to-date briefing on America First Legal.
So we'll continue following their cases, and now that you know who's behind some of these really big lawsuits, you'll see how this small, unknown law firm is really working behind the scenes to push Trump's agenda.
And this just in, Stephen Miller is a top contender to be Trump's next national security advisor.
Pakistan and India were on the brink of full-out war last week. It was the top headline and front page of literally every major news outlet, which we as journalists know is pretty rare. It's hard to get that prime news real estate when it comes to global conflicts.
Well, maybe it got that attention because both countries are nuclear powers, and Trump himself, well, he says he helped negotiate the ceasefire. That's a little disputed, which we'll get into a little later. But the ceasefire does seem shaky because there's already been reports of shelling on both sides.
So to rewind a little, on April 22nd, militants killed 26 Indian tourists in the Himalayan region of Kashmir. And right after the attack, Indian officials blamed Pakistan because the country has supported militant and terrorist activity in the region before. But Pakistan has denied any involvement and was even open to an international investigation after this attack.
And then a group called the Resistance Front popped up and took responsibility for it, but then later, they took that back, so it's hard to know what to do with that.
That was confusing.
But Indian officials believe that group is a proxy for the Pakistani terrorist group that carried out the infamous 2008 Mumbai attacks, which killed 160 people.
So after this attack, tensions slowly started escalating. India stopped streaming Pakistani shows, and the two countries canceled visas for each other's nationals. And then India upped the ante by suspending a 65-year-old treaty that governs water sharing between the two countries, meaning Pakistan, which is largely like a farming country, wouldn't have water down the line. So this was all problematic, but since the two countries fight so often, everyone thought that, in a couple days the issue would settle.
But then India kicked off the worst fighting between these countries in half a century. So it led to 4 days of nonstop missiles and drone attacks. India hit Pakistani military targets, air defense systems, and buildings linked to terrorist groups. And Pakistan says it took down at least 5 Indian aircraft and struck 7 military bases.
So the fighter jets and weapons that were involved in this kind of make this a global conflict because they were provided by China, France, Russia, and the US. So all of these other countries are a part of this. But it has been difficult for us to track down exactly the details of these attacks because there is so much misinformation going on, specifically by the two governments themselves.
But we do know that a combined 60 people were killed. And the reason that fighting escalated so quickly is because it's taking place in Kashmir, which is a Muslim majority area connected to both India and Pakistan that India and Pakistan share control of.
And there's been nonstop fighting over this territory since Pakistan and India separated in 1947 from being one full country. My parents are from Pakistan, and they cannot remember a time that there hasn't been crossfire at the border or some kind of war going on there.
That's seriously crazy. I'll admit, I didn't know much about the rivalry until I was traveling to India a few months ago, and to fill out the visa, they ask on the application if you or your parents or your grandparents are from Pakistan. And my friend who's getting married said that none of her Pakistani guests' visas were approved.
Yeah, and honestly, relations between the two countries have definitely been getting worse in the past decade. It wasn't that hard to travel between the two countries before, according to my parents.
Oh, that is interesting. I guess that explains why it took 30 countries, allies of both India and Pakistan, to call them and de-escalate the situation.
And none of it worked until the US had to get involved, which they initially said that they were staying out of. So Trump announced on Saturday that the US had mediated a ceasefire and congratulated the leaders of both countries for using common sense and great intelligence.
It's just a little patronizing. But this is where it gets tricky because apparently India denies that the US played any role. And I guess Prime Minister Modi is furious that Trump announced the ceasefire before he did.
Meanwhile, the Pakistani government quickly thanked the US publicly, and Pakistani citizens were seen celebrating in the streets with fireworks. So it's just interesting to see the difference in reactions between the two countries, especially because India is a very close ally of the US and Pakistan is a really close ally of China and has very frayed diplomatic relations with the US right now.
So there's so much to get into, how can the ceasefire last if India believes Pakistan is supporting cross-border terrorism? And if Pakistan believes India will cut its water supply, both sides have high-tech weaponry and drones. So that's why we're excited to talk to Ravi Agrawal, the Peabody Award-winning editor-in-chief of foreign policy and host of their podcast FP Live, to learn more.
So India and Pakistan were on the brink of war last week, and it escalated to this point very quickly and seemingly out of nowhere, at least to the outside world. Can you kind of paint the picture of what was going on the ground when these attacks were being exchanged? Was real war a fear?
It could have been. So these are two countries that have obviously had several actual wars. And since they became nuclear powers in the 90s, they've had several skirmishes. And what was interesting this time is that they used drones for the first time in the history of their respective conflicts. And what is also interesting is both sides to their domestic audiences made very inflated claims of what these attacks had achieved. And it's only now, a few days after the dust has settled, that we're actually getting a clear sense of which of those claims are accurate and which aren't.
Oh, can you kind of break down what was the misinformation?
On that first night, Pakistan claimed that it shot down 5 Indian fighter jets. It has emerged now, much later, Indian officials off the record are saying they've lost 2 fighter jets, but they're not being clear about which ones. What's interesting here is neither crossed the border. So they were within their airspaces. So that's one set of competing claims. Other one is the extent of damage on either side. It turns out from an investigation by the New York Times so far that it looks like India has inflicted more damage on Pakistani military air bases than the other way around. And we know this from satellite imagery. Where you can see, for example, on a very particular runway that is near Pakistan's nuclear missile command center, the runway's been damaged quite deeply, which would have made it harder for Pakistani jets to take off.
We've been reading that a part of the escalation of this conflict that you're talking about was to boost nationalism within the two countries.
On April 22nd, where this all began, there was indeed an awful terrorist attack in Indian-administered Kashmir. 26 civilians died, and it was a very provocative attack, in part because the attackers, they asked all these tourists, are you Hindu or Muslim? And then they had to prove that they were Muslim, either by reciting a verse from the Quran, and if they couldn't sort of succeed there, they were gunned down. The other would be to show whether you're circumcised or not. And this really led to, across India, a real sense of outrage. So that nationalism in India, it comes from a sense that we have to deal with this problem. Pakistan's economy is failing. There is a line of thinking that if you look at self-interest, this attack, this exchange, it allows Pakistan's army to say, you need us. You need a big, strong military.
And continuing, I guess, onwards with the possibility of this ceasefire lasting, do you think that a true ceasefire can last if Pakistan down the road doesn't have access to this water?
Yeah, this is a major complicating factor. Here's the thing. India doesn't have full control to stop all of the water flows to Pakistan. It doesn't have enough dams, basically, to make that happen. So it can intermittently halt supplies and then flood. It's a very cruel form of leverage. I think for now, my sense is India is going to signal that it is going to continue to keep this treaty in abeyance. But I would be quite surprised if it went down the cruelty road, in large part because that too would not be very popular.
And so we were reading that Modi is upset with Trump for saying like he kind of made the ceasefire happen, and Modi and his officials are saying no, he had nothing to do with it. It was all like bilateral. What have you heard about how India's feeling about the US involvement?
India's upset. There's no doubt about it. For decades, India has really focused on what is called dehyphenating India and Pakistan. So for the longest time in the United States, you would not mention one without mentioning the other. Indians hated that. Trump said that, both leaders should have dinner and sort it out, and, both sides are good people. Indians don't like that. Their sense is quite clear that the United States has become a closer Indian ally, not a Pakistani ally. And the United States should back the side that feels it had terrorism inflicted on it. From my own reporting, the United States was not very involved until right at the end. There was a moment on Friday when Vice President J.D. Vance told Fox News, this is not our business. We're not getting involved, which is very much part of the America First, why should we deal with foreign wars yet again? 24 hours later, Vance was on the phone with Prime Minister Modi. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, was constantly on the phone with his counterparts in India and Pakistan.
And a lot of this conversation is under the guise that Pakistani government, Pakistani military did have something to do with the attacks on April 22nd. Like, how much proof do we actually have besides what has happened in the past?
Yeah, it's a very good point. No one wants to talk about proof. They see every instance in the past as proof of the present. What we do know is that a very little known militant group called the Resistance Front, which is linked to Lashkar-e-Taiba, which is based in Pakistan, claimed responsibility and then hours later retracted that claim. Maybe because of pressure, maybe because it is, as they say, they were hacked. Where we are now is India feels that it didn't need to show the world proof. And at some level in this America first, India first, Israel first world we are in, countries increasingly feel that they don't need to act on proof.
We built glasses that let you identify anybody on the street. The information a tool collects from just a photo of your face is staggering.
To use it, you just put the glasses on, then as you walk by people, the glasses will detect when somebody's face is in frame. This photo is used to analyze them, and after a few seconds, their personal information pops up on your phone.
Right?
That's crazy.
June Lee, right? You're
This photo was created. This is like from
you're from Bergen County Academies?
Yeah.
Your Korean name is Ju Yoon?
Oh my gosh.
Cambridge Community Foundation.
Okay, that's so stalkery.
Oh, hi, ma'am. Wait, are you Betsy?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I think I met you through like the Cambridge Community Foundation, right?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's great to meet you. I'm Kane.
Oh wait. Oh, so do you happen to be the person working on like minority stuff for like Muslims in India at all or something? Really? Are you Kashif?
Yes.
Oh, I've read your work before.
I know.
I'm Andrew. Nice.
So my mom actually sent me the PBS Nova. Like PBS Nova did a whole story on them, and Mabel and I watched it, and we thought this is really interesting.
Partially because the two kids that made this are also two best friends.
Kids.
Partially because the two students that built these are also best friends and entrepreneurs.
Which is giving Newsgirls.
And we've actually wanted to do like a smart glasses facial recognition type of story for a while, and watching two undergrad students make these glasses that can look at a stranger and just know their social security number terrified us.
Exactly. That's what makes these glasses scarier. Like, it only relied on publicly available data. Obviously, these guys go to Harvard and they're coding geniuses, but theoretically anyone could manufacture a product like this.
Yeah, so they're built off of Meta's Ray-Ban smart glasses, face search engines, and a ChatGPT tool that scrapes the internet for public names and like addresses. And their whole goal with these glasses wasn't to sell them. It was to raise awareness about everyday surveillance and just how public everyone's information is.
Which is why even though they've been offered a lot of money to sell I-XRAY, they've turned it all down.
And I guess it's not just them. Like, Meta actually developed their own facial recognition glasses and also decided to not put it on the market because of ethical and legal concerns.
Well, that's why when the founders posted this teaser video with technology that's not on the market, it went insanely viral. It was written up in New York Times, Forbes, Daily Mail, Verge, and more.
So we spoke to the two geniuses and best friends behind I-XRAY, Anfu Nguyen and Kane Ardafio.
Anfu and Kane, first of all, how did you come up with the idea for I-XRAY?
The idea originally came because we used to run VR Club, and a lot of the projects dealt with virtual reality and AI and how you can merge them to unlock new use cases. And then we knew about PimEyes, which is the reverse face search engine, and kind of just was combining them. Was how it started.
Like, did you get the glasses first? Did you develop like the facial recognition first? Like, how did you go about making these?
Yeah, it was the software pipeline first. So we were connecting the face search engine and like the AI stuff together to make it fully automatic. And then after that, we did like the smart glasses and then tied more databases together to get even more info, like home address and stuff.
How long did that take?
Coding took like 4 days.
That's kind of fast.
Only 4 days.
That's really fast.
And so how did you guys like link up? Because Mabel and I are always so interested in this as we're partners now in this project.
Yeah, so me and Anfu, we had like a cool meeting story. So like I was working in the makerspace, just like building an electric skateboard at Harvard for fun, because I like to just like build fun tech projects. So we just like happened to be in the room at the same time, both building projects, and we were like, oh, we both like to build things. So we like got each other's phone numbers, and we're like, okay, we should definitely link over the summer and start building projects together. And we eventually did.
Yeah, we hear this wasn't the first project that you guys built together. We read about was it a flamethrower?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the very first project we did together. So like in total, we've probably done like 15 or so, 10 to 15 projects. So the flamethrower was the first one. And then we built like an electric skateboard that you could control with your fingers. Then we built a robotic tentacle. Then we built like a game engine for augmented reality. And then it just like kind of kept going. And then the glasses were the most recent one.
That is crazy.
Ironically, that was like the least amount of coding work.
What are the ways that these could be used in a positive light?
That's actually what we're pursuing right now. A lot of people have brought up like, oh, what if emergency workers could use this tech to pull up like medical records or identify people who are incapacitated? That would literally save lives. Another one was like, there's a few people who suffer from face blindness where they can't like recognize even their loved ones. I think a lot of people with Alzheimer's would also have the same like benefit from this.
But we do understand that originally the project was kind of to show the issues with privacy. So what do you hope people take away from this project now? Like, should everyone just kind of be like, oh, this is scary, we should scrub ourselves online?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaways are like, one, that there is much more data on the internet that is publicly available than people think, like literally down to your home address, even your social security number is accessible on the internet now. And then two, I think it's more of like a trend where ChatGPT and other language models can now automate a lot of tasks. That's what makes our thing fully automatic, is because we have a ChatGPT just like going around like reading all these articles and then finding all this info. And then the third thing is like people should like go through our guide if they're worried, and we have a whole like guide on how to delete your data off of these databases.
I think what was shocking to Mabel and me when we were doing research is that you used only publicly available data. Are you guys worried about it being in the wrong hands, and how could this be abused, this technology?
We thought a lot about this before we posted the video. We didn't open source anything, so people couldn't just like download it and like see how it was exactly done. We obfuscated how it was done. We didn't sell any software, so a bunch of people offered a lot of money for what we built, but we just didn't sell anything.
People use facial recognition for everything now, like in airports or unlocking phones. So is privacy just like a luxury, do you think, that we don't have now? Are these tools just an inevitability?
The reason they keep popping up is because facial recognition genuinely is very convenient. Like I do enjoy like going a little bit quicker through the airport. The way to like influence whether certain things go into the market or not is partially a social acceptance thing.
Do you think it's about like social framing?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like anyone can build and launch these kinds of things. I mean, 2 undergrads did this in a few days, basically. So I think it's more of like we have to think about what we accept in society or not.
What more can you tell us about what you're developing now?
Basically, it's in real life social network. The problem right now is like when you walk around in the real world, you basically know nothing about anyone. The way you express yourself as a person is limited to your clothes or like how you dress, like like very simple stuff. But what if you could make it whatever you wanted? Like, oh, this is like the thing I care the most about. Oh, I love building things my entire life, and I, like code a lot or something. And you can meet other people like that. That's what we're working toward right now as a use case for this. Yeah, I think it could like make the world feel like a small town again, where everyone kind of knows everybody and you connect on a much deeper level.
Thanks for tuning in.
Join us next week for another Not Awful News, everyone's favorite segment.
Bye.